Hey everybody, this is Daniel with Free Tours by Foot New Orleans. I'm standing right here in front of the beautiful Audubon Aquarium of the Americas, and today we're actually going to visit one of New Orleans' oldest neighborhoods. We're going to visit what's referred to as Algiers Point, which you guys can actually see just across the river right there behind me. Now, in order to go over there, we're actually going to board this ferry boat right here behind me. I'm actually going to show you guys how to do that because from the East Bank side near the French Quarter, this is the best way to actually get there. So let's board that ferry boat. It costs just $2 each way. $1 for seniors 65 plus and children 2 and under are free. On weekdays, ferries begin running early in the morning, but weekends usually have a late morning start. Be sure to check the official schedule. The ride offers wide views of the New Orleans skyline, and it's an inexpensive way to experience a Mississippi River boat cruise. So we have arrived at Algiers Point. Now Algiers Point was actually founded in 1719. It's actually the city's second oldest neighborhood. Now the city itself was established in 1718. Of course, we were founded by a French-Canadian, Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne Sieur de Bienville. And they were thinking about what to do with this side of the river. And what they decided was that this side of the river was actually going to end up being a place where kind of the more unpleasant things that no one wanted to live around, such as like stockyards, meat packing, shipbuilding, and coal, would eventually become what Algiers was going to do for New Orleans. And so the Spanish colonial government, though, by the time we get into the 1760s, the Spanish were actually in control of New Orleans from 1762 until approximately 1800. They sold it off mostly as plantation land, and it actually became the Duverger plantation. Unfortunately, fire destroyed that house in 1895, but shortly we will go to the original site of where the Duverger plantation was. After Spanish colonial rule came in, there actually was a revolt against them. There was a revolt against them led by a Frenchman named Lafreniere, and Lafreniere's revolt was put down violently by the Spanish under a guy named General Alejandro O'Reilly. And when he took over control of New Orleans, he was the one who decided to actually sell this mostly away as plantation land. One of the things about Algiers to kind of bring up is that, you know, growing up here, I always kind of had a sense of Algiers Point as being kind of like a more isolated part of the city. Despite the fact that you can, you know, literally see the French Quarter from back here, most people who live in Algiers Point, their feeling is that they like the fact that they're kind of off to the side and off to their own over here. And, you know, it's just, in many ways, kind of feels like sort of a village within New Orleans. And like I said, I think the people who live here, they really do like it that way. First off, over here, just want to show this to you. This is actually called the Crown and Anchor. The Crown and Anchor, this place is actually done in the style of an English village pub. As you can see, it's got one of those kind of English police boxes out front. But for you guys who are Doctor Who fans, that is a whole different meaning right there, huh? They have a really good beer selection, some single malt scotch, and some good mixed drinks. Now, as far as food goes, they're actually mostly just snacks, so don't expect to come here and have any kind of a substantial meal. So, I also wanted to show you this. One of the things that Algiers Point is well known for in the city is actually being a home to several what we call shotgun houses. And actually, many of the shotgun houses here are actually pretty fairly ornamental and actually rather beautiful homes, as you can see. Now the shotgun style houses, those are mostly all originally designed to have no hallways and no closets. So actually the homes, they're built kind of straight back, and you know, it's kind of the old saying goes, you can fire a shotgun through one front of the house and then the shell would go all the way through the home and out into the backyard. But also it's done in kind of that long tubular style, kind of like the barrel of a shotgun. And so this actually, the shotgun house traditionally has been mostly middle-class housing and has provided, you know, in terms of affordable rentals in the city of New Orleans. The shotgun style was, you know, kind of filled that need for a pretty long time. Speaking of food, by the way, if you do want to get something to eat while you're down here in Algiers Point, this is my recommendation, is the Dry Dock Cafe. Dry Dock Cafe actually has some nice sandwiches, salads, some good stuff in there, some good eats. So, you know, of course, you can have your drink over at Crown and Anchor, and then you can also come down here to Dry Dock and enjoy a little bit of food as well. Now, I've also heard many actually sometimes refer to the Algiers Point as actually being kind of like the, French Quarter of the West Bank, or like the French Quarter with parking. I've actually heard it referred to as well. And if you look across the way, you can actually see the French Quarter. And of course, there was the Algiers ferry landing, actually not too far away from where we actually set off, right over there by the aquarium. So, this is a good spot to come if you just kind of want to get away from the city. And as you can see too, this is without a doubt one of the most spectacular views of the city is actually coming here from Algiers Point. So definitely something recommended there as well. Also, I'm standing on one of the levee systems here in New Orleans. You can actually see all this down here, how it kind of really dips down. And actually I'm going to have to dip down into the neighborhood itself after getting off the ferry boat. Now, these levee systems, they were actually built as part of what's called the Flood Control Act of 1927, and that was actually after the great Mississippi River Valley flood of that very same year. I believe they don't actually pass the Flood Control Act until 1928, but this actually built most of the American levee system that we rely on to keep the flooding here at bay. It's also worth mentioning that the entirety of Algiers Point, and for that matter, a lot of the East Bank side of this river too, is actually above sea level. We're actually pretty well above sea level at this point. And that actually has to do with the fact that the Mississippi River, when all the sediment would come down from the north, all the water would come down from the north, it would overflow its banks on both sides and actually deposit sediment on both sides of the river. So, when the all the snow up north, and it would send that water down, it would overflow its banks and actually fill all this out as a floodplain. Well, over time, the sediment deposits would then remain on both sides of the river. It actually built kind of a natural high ground we refer to as the sliver on the river. So Algiers Point is actually built on one of those sliver on the river high grounds. So a neighborhood that definitely gets some damage from things like Hurricane Ida. You can actually kind of see a blue roof there off in the distance, but for the most part is generally considered fairly protected. And here's one of the true beauties of Algiers Point right here, the Algiers Courthouse. Now, this was built in 1896, and it was actually built in a style was called Richardsonian Romanesque, which is actually the same as Tulane University, if you guys ever get a chance to check that out. Now, of course, Algiers had a great fire in 1895 that burnt down, we believe, somewhere over 200 structures within the neighborhood. So there was a massive rebuilding of this neighborhood in the late 19th century. This actually was the site of the Duverger Plantation House, which did end up succumbing to the fire of 1895. This one has a small claims court. They actually do marriage licenses, weddings, and they also do voting as well for the neighborhood. It's actually a really good place to do your city business if you need to work with City Hall in New Orleans, because we are still in Orleans Parish. So if you don't want to go down to City Hall in downtown New Orleans and pay for all that parking, if you can get something done here at the Algiers Courthouse, not a bad idea. Also, just over here on our left is actually a beautiful mural. And as you guys can see, they did a beautiful rendition there of one of our southern live oak trees. Now, our live oak trees around New Orleans, many of them are actually several hundred years old. They actually don't lose their leaves in the wintertime, so that's actually one of the reasons why we call them southern live oaks, because they stay pretty green year-round. And as you can see, right around here, they actually have the stairway to this location actually painted as a set of keys on a piano. Really neat looking set of stairs right here. And then right along here, you've also got just a little bit more of that mural, and many of the images that are on this are very reflective of New Orleans history and culture. Now, up here on our right, just across the street, another one of those really nice Algiers Point gems. This is actually called the Old Point Bar. Very classic neighborhood bar. It is believed that this place started as a bar in about the 1840s. However, sometimes during that time period, what actually defines a bar can be up to loose interpretation. They serve a good variety of beers, some mixed drinks, and they also do live music nightly. They filmed about 40 different movies here, and that's actually one of the reasons why so many people actually end up visiting this when they come over to Algiers Point. Just to name a few, they filmed the movie Green Lantern in here. They also filmed The Expendables, Contraband, and also Ray, the Ray Charles biopic starring Jamie Foxx. You can see this is a definitely a cool place to come and have a drink and enjoy yourself. And as I said, it is very much a quintessential neighborhood bar. It's open from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. every day. And by the way, the ferry boat that we were on was actually featured in a couple of movies itself. It was featured prominently in HBO's Treme, and actually what's considered to be a very famous scene of that particular show. And then also Deja Vu starring Denzel Washington. So yeah, as we're leaving the Old Point Bar, I actually just wanted to show you guys this. This is actually what's referred to as a pocket park. A lot of New Orleans neighborhoods, you know, Algiers Point, Mid-City, even the Bayou St. John neighborhood, have these beautiful parks in them that are a lot of times actually kept up by the neighborhood. So much of the city actually follows the curvature of the Mississippi River, so you know, a lot of times we get some pretty irregular streets around New Orleans, so sometimes you end up with just little pieces of excess land. Some of these pocket parks actually around the city can be, you know, real hidden gems when you find them. So now, coming up here on your left, and we're gonna kind of pan up to see this a little bit. This is actually the Canal Commercial Trust and Savings Bank. Now, this particular bank right here, it was actually built in 1907. So definitely another one of the older buildings right here in Algiers Point. It was actually designed by a guy named Emil Vail, who has work all across the South, from Texas all the way to Pensacola, Florida. So a very, very prolific architect. Unfortunately, the bank failed in 1933. They attempted to stay afloat pretty much through the Great Depression, but unfortunately failed, and ended up being taken over by First NBC Bank. So as you can see, definitely one of the more beautiful facades of a building here in Algiers Point. Now, this really magnificent house right here is actually called the Seeger-Reese House. It was actually built in 1850, and the two guys, Seeger and Reese, who it was built for, were actually very much in the transportation industry. They made a lot of money actually moving cargo ships up and down the Mississippi River. Now, this particular home right here is actually done in what's referred to as the Greek Revival style. Now, Greek Revival, that is, I believe, without a doubt, one of the most important architectural styles, not only in American history, but also in New Orleans history. After the Louisiana Purchase, when the city started to become more American, and we had many of these Americans moving into New Orleans, they really were kind of on the, I guess you could say, the back end of what's sometimes called the Greek chic period of American history, where everything neoclassical was all, you know, fashionable and all the rage. And that had a lot to do with the fact that the Americans saw themselves as being what they called the torchbearers of the Greek ideal. And that what that effectively meant was that they wanted to build this democracy, which is very much a, Greek in its style, but then also with a little bit of a Roman flair. So very much that Greco-Roman tendencies were there. But when you transport this style to New Orleans, what you can use those columns for is to build up a pretty tall two-story superstructure. So many of these houses have sometimes 14, 16-foot ceilings in them. Open up all the windows in the front and back, and you allow yourself a maximum airflow space to go through the house. So that's really what is the secret to most New Orleans architecture, is effectively, do we suffocate death in the summertime or not? But it just so happened that the Greek Revival also really fit a lot of those American standards as well. And also, shouldn't be any surprise to anybody when you go to Washington, D.C., a lot of that is the Americans attempting to rebuild ancient Athens on top of a swamp just like us. So very, very American in its way. And then over here you have a really beautiful southern live oak tree right here. Estimates on the age of this particular oak tree are about approximately 200 to 300 years old. Now, with that being said, like I was talking about oak trees earlier, the only way these things die is they get so heavy that the branches will fall over and split the trunk of the tree, and that's how the tree dies. So when the trees start getting really old, you actually have to have poles that hold the branches up. So we have one in City Park that's almost 900 years old called the John McDonough oak. So this one is only about a third of its age, and as you can see, truly, truly magnificent tree. Worth mentioning too that that fern that you see on the branches is actually called resurrection fern. Well, right now it's brown and it's dead because we really haven't had much rainfall lately. But we get in the summertime, New Orleans starts getting into what I like to call its monsoon season, And a lot of that is going to turn green and lush, but only for about a week. And then after about a week or so, it all turns brown and dies again. It goes through kind of a never-ending cycle of life and death, that resurrection fern. And I guess you could say, I've heard people say in the past that, New Orleans has a tendency to go through a never-ending cycle of life and death. So, maybe there's something to be said for us. Well, you guys, that is, I guess, as you could say, a small slice of what Algiers Point has to offer. I really urge you guys, when you come to visit New Orleans, take about a half day. Get right on that ferry boat. It's a nice ride. You get a beautiful look at the city. Come over here in Algiers Point, especially like to come for an evening and, just tour around. Look at some of the beautiful houses. Go have a drink at Old Point Bar. Maybe have a drink at Crown and Anchor, and just, enjoy this little, what many refer to as the hidden gem of New Orleans. Well, this is Daniel. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Safe and happy travels. And don't forget, if you have a question or a comment, leave it in there. And if any of you guys who are locals or have been here before, let us know if you've been to Algiers Point and what you thought about it. And of course, as always, feel free to buy me a coffee. All right. Thanks again.